Test in Production for May the 7th, 2020. My name is Yoz Graham. I'm a LaunchDarkly developer advocate. And our guest today is another LaunchDarkly developer advocate, my colleague Dawn Parzic. How are you doing today, Dawn?
I'm doing great. How are you, Yoz?
All right, thank you. You are going to talk to us about DevOps parenting.
Yes.
And I am looking forward to this, speaking as both a parent and a DevOps person. I as I tweeted just now, I would love to know how to keep a redundant array of inexpensive children. Even just the inexpensive part would be
yeah.
would be
There's nothing about
fantastic.
kids that are inexpensive.
But this is it's interesting. I know that there are all kinds of techniques and ideas that we learn from DevOps of how to deal with bizarre, semi-controllable chaos that may explode at any moment. And so learning how to apply those lessons to children parenting is, I think, a great idea. And these are things that you've been using day to day?
Sometimes day to day, sometimes, in the heat of the moment when we're running an experiment, we'll be like, oh, we're just going to try this thing.
Brilliant. So you're going to be talking now for about 15 minutes or so. Anybody watching, please, we'll be taking questions afterwards from the stream chat. So please post your questions, and Dawn and I will be discussing them and other things as well. In the meantime, please take it away, Dawn.
Great. Thanks, Yoz. I originally gave a talk on DevOps parenting, one of the first talks I ever gave in 2017. And I thought it would be a good time to revisit that idea of DevOps parenting, especially given the situation where we're all, as parents, trying to balance work and homeschooling and parenting and everything else all at the same time. Now, my journey into parenthood was a little different. I became a parent in 2015 when we adopted our son. This is one of my all-time favorite photos of our family. It was taken the day his adoption was finalized. And you might be able to tell from this picture that he's a little bit of a rule breaker. When he's been asked to raise his right hand to be sworn in, he raises his left hand. So it just kind of sets the scene for what we had coming for years to come. But from a parent perspective, right now, as I said, we're trying to balance work and parenting and self-care and all this other stuff. And when you think about testing and production, parenting is the ultimate testing and production situation. There is no staging environment. Every change, every mistake, all of that's happening in production. Basically, we're just making it up as we all go along. And I was attending my first DevOps days, and about the same time that we were finalizing adoption, and I'm realizing like so many of the principles were like, wait a minute, like I could apply this to my parenting. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The 3 ways, for example. The 3 ways are flow, feedback, and continuous improvement and learning. Flow refers to like how work and communication happens from, higher ups down to, the workers. Feedback is then delivered back upstream in short amplified cycles. That feedback is incorporated and changes are made as we continue to learn. I have found that this in no way epitomizes the parent-child relationship. We'll tell our son what to do. He'll complain. He amplifies his complaints, but he still has to do them. Or what happens more often with my rule breaker of a child is he skips the feedback phase and he goes straight into making adjustments without our knowledge or consent. He's gotten into weeding and gardening, which is a great skill to have. But the other day I had him out and I'm like, okay, go weed this section of the yard. Well, he then decided that part of weeding was digging up bricks bricks that were planted in the area because he couldn't get the weeds. So he dug up all these bricks, went and got a dolly that was in the garage to move the bricks to another location. So that feedback loop was not in here in any way, shape, or form. He then had to go and move all of the bricks back because where he put them was not where they needed to be. So it ended up creating slightly more work for him. This concept really struck me when I first heard about it at DevOps Days of Kaikaku, which is a radical or disruptive change. Sometimes change is expected, but sometimes it's a total surprise. Now, with parenting, a lot of stuff can be a surprise. And with the current pandemic, we were basically thrown into this situation with zero notice. Overnight, I went from being the only person that was working from home to now my spouse and my child is here all day, every day. This is highly disruptive. We've all had to learn how to adjust to this pretty quickly. We created a schedule that balanced work, schooling, and sometimes, if we're lucky, a little bit of fun and relaxation. What we decided to do was my spouse gets up in the morning, takes care of our son, and he starts work at 9:45. I start work earlier. I start work around 8. At 10 o'clock, I take a 2-hour break to take care of our kid, make sure he's getting his schoolwork done, teaching him, making sure he's, not moving bricks in the backyard. And that worked. But while that schedule we originally put into place was good, it wouldn't be DevOps if we didn't look to continuously improve things. And this is where the concept of Kaizen comes in, where you can get big results when you measure things, work as a team, and make small changes over time. So we're definitely working as a team. We're constantly communicating of like what's working and what's not working. And so we put the schedule in place, and about a month or 6 weeks ago now, my husband's company offered 2 weeks of paid parental leave for parents to help them navigate, school closures and daycare closures. They can use it however they want. So we decided that even though things were working, neither of us felt very productive or successful at work or kind of at home. So we're like, well, maybe going down to 4 days a week would help. So my husband takes Thursdays off, and I've been taking Fridays off for the last couple of weeks just to see how things are going. And I tell you that Thursdays that I've had off, I have felt way more productive. I get 100% focus at work. I've been writing. I've been able to write 2 articles a day. I've been able to build presentations in a single day. It's been highly unusual, but getting that day is making all the difference. So we'll see how long we can continue and what other changes we may make along the way. I am a big planner. When I learned that schools were closing in March, I was one of those parents that created a schedule and stuck it on the refrigerator for our son. Partly that was because he asked for it. He needs structure and knowing what's happening and where he needs to be and what he needs to be doing. So that worked really well for us. So be able to come up with that plan. I was also added to a bunch of online groups where everyone's sharing these tips and tricks and ideas of resources that are out there. So I created an Airtable of projects and things to do. So the schools closed in March. They were supposed to open in April, but we were pretty sure that he wasn't going back to school for the rest of the year. And sure enough, he's not. He'll be home through the rest of the year. Now I'm also preparing for summer camps to be closing. So I've created a list of online classes he can take, coding classes, art, graphic design projects, things that can hopefully keep him a little more engaged for a couple of hours at a time over the summer. But we're having to adjust rapidly to changes with what's coming down the road. community is such an important part of DevOps. And I also find it's an important part of parenting as well. When the social distancing orders were first announced for Washington, we talked with two neighborhood families and decided to form like our own little community pod. If one of us is going to the store, we check to see if anybody else needs anything so that we're reducing the number of trips that people are making out. We're helping with the parenting. We each are taking kids for a couple of hours a day so that parents can get work done. I've also been doing puzzle swaps with friends because people are way more interested in puzzles. And it's something that I enjoy doing with my son. So we can't buy them. We can't go to the store. So we're swapping with friends in our community. My sister's been sending books that her son no longer reads so that we don't have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on new books for him. I also started cross-stitching again during all of this. And my son decided he's very interested and he wants to learn as well. Can't find cross-stitch kits online because everybody's bought them out because everyone's looking for things to do with their kids. I made a comment online and a friend of mine said, I've been buying kits at thrift shops. I have a bunch of beginner kits. I'll mail them to you. So being able to reach out to community members to ask for help, to do simple things like swapping stories, it's been incredibly helpful for us. Another big piece of DevOps is sharing. And I look at this from a parenting perspective of, I'm trying to share with my son, but I'm also trying to share with other parents as well. So when all of this started, I was looking for ways to include my son in my work because a coworker suggested like, well, maybe you can get more work done if he's working with you. But I first thought, was like, that's not possible. Like I give talks, I write, like, how am I going to include him in this? And I slowly realized, wait, there's certain things he can do. We decided to do a Twitter takeover where my son took over my Twitter account for an hour. He had his own hashtag for it. He got very engaged with the community members that he was talking to. It was an interesting learning experience, I think, for both of us. We were able to talk about online etiquette, online safety. And a side effect of this was I actually inspired other people to have their kids take over their Twitter accounts as well. I've also learned that he is very creative and likes being on film and camera. I've recorded a couple of videos for a Minute on the Mic podcast, and he participates in them occasionally with me. He was very interested in being here today, but he has a class meeting that is taking place now. So unfortunately, he is not able to be here. Otherwise, he would be jumping up and down behind me. But sharing goes beyond things I can share with my son. I'm also looking at helping other parents. I share my parenting misadventures on Twitter. I share in Slack communities that I'm a part of. I write articles about this. I give talks and share information like this one here. It's not always easy to share, especially when you feel like you've made a mistake or done something wrong and people are so quick to judge. But if I can help people feel that they're not alone, then I'm willing to share and put myself out there. This hasn't been the easiest adjustment for all of us to make, but in a lot of ways, I'm surprised that it hasn't been harder. I think I was expecting the worst. I don't even know what I was expecting, but it hasn't been as hard as I thought it would be. And with all of this DevOps principles, if you take one thing away from this talk today, let it be that you're not harming your child, if the only thing you're doing is making sure they're fed and clothed on a daily basis, if you're not doing creative art projects or camping in the backyard or virtual tours of Disney or baking extravaganzas, it's okay. Just like with DevOps, there's no one size fits all or best practices. It doesn't apply to parenting as well. We're all just doing the best we can, and we don't need to see this as a competition and who has the most Twitter-worthy, Instagram-worthy parenting style. Thank you.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Dawn. That's great. And I think that ending point is one that is really worth reiterating through all of this, because, you know, there's parts of this where you're talking and you're saying how well you've set certain things up, which generally sounds fantastic. And, you know, I'm the kind of parent where I'm going, God, I wish I had that kind of energy. I must be terrible. I must be failing. And it's no, you know, we're all doing the best we can in this situation. And it's, you know, in this kind of situation, as you say, you're keeping them fed and clothed and, you know, relatively clean. And that's already winning, frankly, in this kind of situation. You know, it can be, as you said, off-putting if you see your friends' Instagrams or whatever, and the trouble is you compare. I think one of the wisest things I once heard is, you know, don't compare your insides to everybody else's outsides. There's the whole, you know, swan analogy of looking graceful above the surface and paddling like hell underneath. Plus, you know, people only put on Instagram the stuff that they're proud of. So there's sorry, excuse me, rambling there, but that was fantastic, and there's so many great points in there. I think one of the to start with in terms of questions. By the way, if you are watching, to our audience, please do post questions on the chat. We welcome any questions about DevOps parenting and the combination thereof. So one of the typical questions we ask when having a speaker on is, this is all very nice, but how do I get started? Right? Especially, and I think, you know, one of the things that really applies for DevOps and parenting here is that in both, you tend to be in a situation where by the time you need the advice, you're already somewhat snowed under. You don't have much spare time or energy. So how would you advise getting started with these kinds of things when it's hard to muster that energy?
I think, as with even like a tech project, starting small, figuring out like what's one thing that I can do today or within the next 5 minutes, instead of trying to be like, oh, I'm going to implement all of these processes. Like, what is the one thing I could do now? And for me, like one of the first things I did when schools closed, it was I had to put a schedule together. Right. And there's a lot of information overload. Like there's all this stuff like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. But for me, it's like, I need a schedule. Like I know that without that, it would be a little more chaotic. And my son does not do well in chaotic environments. So that was what I decided was like, if I do one thing, like I'm going to put that schedule on. For other people, it might be something different. But just figure out that one little thing and start small. Right. Like boiling the ocean's bad.
Oh, yeah. By boiling the ocean, we mean, you know, that trying to reinvent everything from the ground up in one go.
Right.
Because you can't. And I think that, you know, the starting small thing is great. Sometimes, look, you know, if you can get a blank piece of paper and stick it to the fridge and write schedule on the top, that's a great start, right? Yeah. It means you're going to put the schedule there as it evolves.
Yeah. And just because it's there doesn't mean it can't be changed. Right? It doesn't mean like, oh, I can only do this here. Like we realize that like one thing that we have on the schedule is like independent reading. Like we're going to read for 30 minutes. And we had that set up after lunch or wherever it was. But after lunch is when I go back to work. And my son wanted me to read with him. So I'm like, oh, okay. So like during the 2-hour block, I'll sit down and read with him and like scratch his back and like we get some like cuddle time together. Because we have the ability to adjust and change that schedule. It's not carved in stone.
And kids are picking up that these are abnormal times, right? These are it's not normally like this for a reason, and it's difficult for everybody.
Right.
I
think the hardest thing is having him ask like, when are things going back to normal? Like, the governor said like May 4th, I can, do this. It's like, no, it's like, it's not going back to normal. Like, normal is going to look different.
Right. And the hard thing as well is a situation where you say, look, the grown-ups don't have the answers on this, all the answers on this one. We've got a few of the answers, but it's we are also stuck in a place of not knowing, which can be tough. But it's I think showing them as you demonstrating, just showing some way to lead, by little bit by bit here and there, to make things better is enormously helpful. So there's obviously saying that it can be incredibly difficult and there is danger here of burning out, right? So what do you as a parent, when you get to those points which are, very easily reachable these days where you feel like you can't handle it right now? What do you do in those situations?
I've been taking very long walks. I start off the day with between a 2 to 3 mile walk. It's like the 1 hour a day that I have to myself. Well, the dog is with me, but he's not as demanding of my time when we're out on a walk. So we do that a lot. We've set up a couple of date nights so that we can have some adult interaction without the child, and instead of going out, like we're staying in. But a few weeks ago, we were supposed to have gone to see a play that night, and I was a little upset that like, oh, we haven't done that. But like, oh well, we could watch Parasite. Not really a kid-friendly movie, but I also knew that like I can't watch it after he goes to bed because I'm too tired to watch a subtitled movie at that point in time. So we sent him into the basement, said you can watch and do whatever you want in the basement, play with the Xbox, watch a movie. We're having date night up here. So finding things like that, like where we can have some solitude, some sense of, normalcy, is helping to avoid the burnout in a lot of respects.
Yeah. And showing them, I mean, my experience with kids as well, it tends to be it's that time when you're asking them to leave you alone for a while that they come up with the most questions.
Yes.
But you just gotta, I suppose, be persistent with them and get them used to that idea. It's going to be rough the first couple of times.
Oh yeah. It's like when I want like the solitude, like you said, like that's when they're like, oh, like we need all the stuff. But if I don't need that solitude, it's like you're able to quietly draw or play with your perler beads or read. Like, why could you not do this when I ask you to?
Right. And that's, I mean, I think that, it's understandable given that situations where we find ourselves suddenly left in charge, and knowing that we're left in charge, knowing that we're suddenly alone is what brings up, gets our minds working along the, oh, what if this suddenly, I'm a whole lot more nervous than I was before.
Yes. And for a kiddo like mine, he has anxiety and he wants to be left alone. He wants that ability to stay home alone, but when he gets it, his mind starts racing, and it doesn't end well. Like, we've been trying to be like, okay, after dinner, like, we'll go for a walk, and we've told him, like, he doesn't have to come with us. He can stay home, because he was getting very anxious being outside. He's like, well, the virus is out here. Like, it's not safe. It's like, well, fine, then you can stay in the house, and Dad and I will go for a walk. He doesn't want to stay in the house. He's like, nope, I'll go with you.
Right.
It's too much to be home alone and wondering, like, what if we don't come home? Like, yeah, I'm going to come home from my walk. Pretty sure.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose, it's understandable in, times of great uncertainty that kids get uncertain about a whole load of other things as well, knowing that you will come back after a walk. And so showing them that there are things that you are still sure of is very helpful. Similarly, for those of us who have a partner with our kids, how it's useful to trade off activities and schedule. Is that part of the work that you have? Is working out who's looking after which kid when? Especially, well, in your case, one kid, but things like that.
Yeah, we've split it up fairly well. Like, my husband takes the morning routine, like making sure he's had breakfast and is dressed and all of that. I generally do the bedtime routine. We'll read at bedtime, scratch his back, have conversations, whatever. But sometimes I just have to tap out, be like, I can't tonight. And last night was one of those nights. I was like, I'm done. I can't. And so my husband took over the bedtime routine. So we have like set things, but again, you have to be willing to shift and like have that feedback of I don't have the capacity to do this tonight for whatever reason that is, and be able to tap out and have somebody else come in.
Yeah, completely. Is there, so I'm wondering, coming back to the theme of DevOps and parenting, some of the lessons that you've learned, and I'm trying to remember, because there are a couple of, as ever with DevOps, there's a couple of important Japanese words. I've completely forgotten which one it was now. Before Kaizen, you had
the Kaikaku.
Yes.
A disruptive change.
Right. So could you say a little more about that again? It was basically about unexpected or surprising changes and being able to handle them.
Right. Yeah. It's a matter of like, are you doing like a small incremental change or like a big bang? Like, if you're just changing everything all at once, and that's what that Kaikaku is. And as much as we want to do small changes, sometimes we can't.
Right.
With our son, we were struggling finding a right school for him and the right educational environment, and we had to abruptly pull him out of a school a couple of years ago, mid-school year. Or not even mid-school year, it was like 6 weeks into the school year. Like, he was abruptly pulled out and moved into another school. That was a huge change. Did not go incredibly smoothly, but in the long term, it was the right move, and we know that now. But getting over that hurdle of we've made this massive change, it's been highly disruptive. It took some time, but we're very happy with the school he's at now, which is the one he moved into. So it's
That's great. And it's interesting thinking about trying to think about the ways in which we would do that in DevOps, and the similarities between things. That occasionally in DevOps there are times you try and do gradual migrations for everything, but sometimes you just have to do a hard cutover. And the best you can do is loads of preparation beforehand, and then loads of checking and double checking afterwards, and being available, watching out for problems afterwards. Sorry, say something.
It's monitoring. Like, so I've made this big change, and like, what do we have to monitor? Like, how are behaviors shifting? And whether you're talking about the behavior of an application, an infrastructure piece, or a human, like how are things changing? Like, is the child more tired? Do they have more energy? Are they arguing more? Like, you could use those same kind of metrics of monitoring the systems and the situation.
Right. And that's a great way to think about it. Actually, I've not thought about it in those terms. Especially because the trouble is, when it comes to monitoring, we're used to automated monitoring. We're used to something that automatically gathers metrics. And we don't usually have that luxury with parenting, but I think we have more of it than most would think. I think there are some metrics or results that you can get from your local environment. You're not going to get alerts most of the time, or rather, you do occasionally get alerts that come considerably later than you want them to. The child will let you know when the boredom level has crossed the threshold. Unfortunately, you really wanted to know a little earlier than that.
Yeah. I get alerts when he's turned his tablet on, because that was a necessary automation that we had to put in. So
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yep. So I get an alert on my phone when the tablet gets powered on. I get reports of what he's doing on the tablet. It required me, installing software, but like, now it's automated. Like, now I know I don't have to, ask and be lied to. Like, this is automatically getting pushed to me. We get reports through Microsoft Family, I think, for the Xbox, that shows me what he's watching and how much time he's spending with different games and things like that. So it's like, you're getting, reports and feedback, and then some of it's automated, and some of it you then have to be like, this shouldn't have been moved.
Right. And that stuff is also really useful, not just for telling you when your kid is acting out, but what your kid's interested in, right? If you find your kid is spending most of their entirely valid screen time allowance on a single game, it might be a cool thing to play with them one day. It might be a cool thing to ask about. It shows that you're paying attention.
Yeah. Like, I was looking at his Netflix viewing history, and like, he was watching a lot of Bob Ross videos.
Right.
I'm like, okay. He's like, I want to learn how to do this painting. Like, great. What are the supplies? And so like, he then, we bought him all the supplies to do painting, and he's been doing acrylic painting and watercolor paintings. And so it's like, I felt like snoopy and nosy, but it's like, hey, like, I was able to identify, like, this is something he wants to do. So
yeah.
And he's got some
great
as a result of it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So
I can show you one. Hold on. Okay.
Oh yeah, go on. And this is also a good time for me to say to anybody watching, please do post your questions. We're going to be here for at least a quarter of an hour more. That is lovely. Oh, yeah. Look at that! I'm sorry, trying to see through a shrunk version on what the stream is doing, but that's a mountain with a waterfall.
Yeah, it's a mountain with like a waterfall cascading down it, and like pine trees in front, and yeah, like,
wonderful.
Watch some Bob Ross videos, watch some other stuff, and then he figured out how to make it his own.
Awesome. And the great thing with Bob Ross, of course, is that even if it doesn't inspire your kid to paint, it's a remarkably calming influence.
Yes. It's like, chill.
Happy little clouds. So there's something else you talked about briefly as well, which I was wondering about. You talked about your local community pod, as you call it, making, reaching out to your neighbors and sharing activities, puzzle responsibilities, things like that. How did you start that? It's something I think that a few of us, certainly me, have wondered about and not really known where to start and what to be aware of when doing that kind of thing.
I think for us, when Seattle first announced that schools were closing, I reached out to 2 other families in the neighborhood. Our kids play together regularly. All parents with a single child at home. So it was a way to be like, okay, like, is there some socialization we can still provide to our kids? And also, how are we going to get our jobs done? Does everybody have the ability? And part of it was like, does everybody have the ability to work from home during this time? And if not, like, is there a way, like, what do you need as a family to help you get through this? So it was really just opening up that conversation. And that's when we started it, it wasn't like an idea of like, oh, like, this is what we're going to do. It was like, none of us had any idea what we needed and what was going to happen at that point in time. But we got together for dinner, talked about, what our options were, and decided that, like, we'll call it like, yeah, like we would like co-teach and like work together. Or like we agreed in terms of, limiting contact with other people, other family members, and, going from there. And it's worked out well.
That's wonderful.
Oh.
It's and yeah, if you can, have those resources. If you can, if you can make contact with people and especially agree on levels of exposure and try and work out what your risks are there. That
right.
I think.
And it's like we feel like it was like limiting. Like, in some ways, it's extending the risk because, like, okay, like we're involved with more people, but we're also limiting the risk because it's fewer trips out to the store. Like one of our neighbors had a subscription to Imperfect Produce, and so we were able to like tack on to that. Or like if somebody was going and doing, a grocery store run, like what are a few things that you need? Like, granted, like we're not gonna be hoarding, be like, oh, I'm gonna buy like 6 dozen eggs. It's like you can go within reason.
Right. And it's great, loads of great things that you can get out of it when you share the load that way. And it's also just nice to be able to bond better with your neighbors.
I think the kids are getting an interesting perspective because like we're all teaching them something like based on like our own skills. Like today, my husband has the kids in the afternoon and he's making homemade root beer with them.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Like my husband, like he does some home brewing. He's like, wait, I wonder if I can make root beer. So he's trying to make root beer with the kids. I don't know what it's going to taste like, but it's an experiment, right? Like we've got to try something. They're making bird houses with another neighbor. One of the other ones has been doing some like playwriting with them.
Right.
It's like these are the areas of like expertise, and we're teaching them skills that they're not necessarily going to learn in school, but it's still useful.
That's great. And it's also great to try something, show kids. I really underrated how important it is to show kids you just trying something and getting it wrong, right? Yeah. It's okay to fail, and because you learn something, and also it's probably entertaining. Adults messing up is always funny.
Sure, absolutely. Like, what's more fun than laughing at, something people said or did wrong?
Right.
If it's in fun, right?
Exactly. It's and showing them, giving them the confidence to try and to fail and try something else. And given that failing is how we learn.
I might have, yeah, I might have done like too good a job at teaching my son that we learn from our mistakes.
Right.
Was one of the funniest things he ever said to me. We were talking about something, and he's like, talking about like sports or whatever. He's like, I don't ever want to be number one. Like, I don't ever want to be like the best at something or come in first place. He's like, I like losing because that way I can learn from my mistakes. Okay. You could still win sometimes. You can still try to be better at things.
That, to me, that's no, your child sounds too perfect. That is too perfect an answer. I refute that. Your child cannot be that perfect.
Oh, he's not. Would you like me to tell you at the time that I left him home? He wasn't alone. My husband was here, but he was sick. And I had to run to the dentist. And my son's like, I don't want to go. I'm like, okay, fine. Like, stay home, stay in your room, do these things. I come home and I smell smoke. I'm like, what? He was lighting fires in the bathroom. And he thought he was being safe by doing it in the bathroom sink because the water's there and he could put the fire out.
You know, you've got to give the kid some points. A small amount of points for that kind of thinking. Yeah. There's absolutely learning opportunities.
Yeah, that perfection is definitely balanced by the like troublemaker side of things. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's the way, especially with toddlers, think of them as little suicide machines. In that they are, if you ever want to find the most dangerous thing in a room, just put a toddler in the room, and they will home in on the most dangerous thing in approximately 20 seconds. If you've accidentally left any razor blades under the couch, they will find them. Things like that, any unprotected wall sockets. It's fabulous. We
skipped over that whole like toddler phase. Our son was 6 when he came to us, so passed over that whole toddler. But that's not to say that like my 11-year-old isn't, have ways of, basically I'm surprised I broke a bone before he did.
Right.
I'm like, he hasn't broken anything yet. Like, I don't know how this is possible.
There's an aspect, especially with babies, right? So having parented a couple of children from birth, the thing that I always warn new parents about is that the first 6 months or first year or so, you become an expert on the past week, right? In that you share that knowledge of no, this is exactly how it works, and that knowledge is usually about a week old for most things. You go instantly from learning something to that's how it's got to be, and that's how it is now. And again, come back to DevOps. There is definitely an aspect here where when you are dealing with continual radical change, or not necessarily radical every change, but continual small change. There's that, as you've been saying, the continuous learning and continuous evolution of practice and processes that is so vital. And it's interesting that in this scenario, in the quarantine and isolation scenario, we're doing a lot of that again. And it's worth thinking about. I mean, for me, it's worth thinking about the times when, having very little sleep and short temper and desperation is not a new thing to many parents, right? These are definitely unique circumstances, but it's stuff that we've coped with before and got through before in different ways. And you know, we made some major mistakes during those times, but that's okay in itself, you know. And making a mistake is not the end of the world, I think, is one of the key things. You know, the whole "don't fear breaking things," as you said, is something that you have to remind yourself of, especially because we can be our own harshest critics. I think you're muted at the moment. I can't hear you. Sorry, excuse me. Could you try talking some more, Dawn? I'm not sure if it's you or me. Let me just check. I will check with Kim, our producer. Okay, so Kim's not hearing you either. I wonder if this is one of those Mac OS Core Audio D moments. Let me see here. In the meantime, I'll just say to our audience, if you're watching, we hope to have Dawn back in a moment. And if you have, we're going to end things off in a little while. If you have any more questions, please post them in the chat, into the Twitch stream. I'm just going to send Dawn something that hopefully will fix things. Oh, hang on, I heard something.
Now.
Yes.
Okay. My wireless headphones are not behaving, so I took them off, and I'm now using the computer audio.
And it's fine. It's a bit, you know, it's fine.
Okay.
It's plenty good enough. Well done. So we've got 5 to 10 minutes left. We've got Mother's Day coming up.
Yes.
Any plans for Mother's Day? I think, you know, we should start by saying, to clarify, that Mother's Day is completely optional depending on your circumstances, because it's not like any of us need any more commitments than we have right now.
Yeah, I've always felt like, you know, Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, like all of those things. It's like I want like appreciation all year, not because like the calendar says you need to appreciate me today. That being said, like my husband has generally done like a really good job over the years of, you know, figuring out like a nice brunch or something to go to. This year we have ordered flowers from the market, Pike Place Market. We normally will go down there and pick out some, but they're doing deliveries to certain neighborhoods, and so we're going and we're able to get flowers from the market semi-delivered.
Oh, that's lovely.
And one of my favorite restaurants that I don't get to very often because there are not any in Washington State is Nando's.
Oh, wow.
Fell in love with Nando's when I lived in London.
Right.
Really like it. So my husband went and got a Nando's sauce, and he's going to try to recreate Nando's chicken on Mother's Day. As
a Brit, obviously I need to, you know, do the extra cheeky thing. Going down with your mates. Top quality banter.
Yeah.
Before popping in the spoons for a pint.
Exactly.
That's great. I confess for various reasons, dietary reasons, I have never tried Nando's, but it sounds great. I feel like I have completely lost out as a result.
It's very good. I don't know. It was just one of my like guilty pleasures when I was there. I'm like, oh, I just popped out, get it, and I'm like, oh, it's so good. And it's not in Seattle. We can drive to Vancouver and get it, but I don't think we're running to Canada anytime soon.
To Canada, even though Canada is fairly nearby.
Yeah, we're not going to anytime soon.
It's a long way to go for fried chicken.
Yeah.
So the final thing, we're going to round things off, but to end, what is as well as Nando's, what are some other things that you look forward, really hope to return to, if we can, once things get back to some semblance of normality?
Yeah, people have been asking me that, and I hate to say, I would love a day away from my family. I love them.
Yes, that.
I mean, we've always I've traveled for work regularly. I would travel, 6 to 8 times a year, but I never found those as big breaks, because I was I'm working, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I do, every once a year I'll do a trip with a girlfriend or family, sisters, whatever. And yeah, I would love to be able to do something like that, even if it's just myself going to the spa for a day, sleeping in a hotel room where nobody wakes me up. I would love that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the trouble with it's a shame, the travel and tourism industry is suffering so badly right now, especially once, we feel confident about getting back out there. We're just going to be running. We're just going to everything. I want all the spas. I'm going to rent, just book 8 flights. That's the dream.
Yeah. And we have a big trip planned for August, and I don't know if it's happening. We have until the end of June to pull the plug.
Right.
And get all
I hope it can.
Mm-hmm.
It's and there's still things you can do, even with quarantine and social isolation. They're still able to get out and get into the car for a while and go somewhere isolated. That is so worthwhile. So I think we're coming to time. Thank you so much, Dawn. This has been a great chat and with some great ideas. Thank you for showing us that it's, there's some ideals that you can aim for, but don't worry about not meeting them. And
whatever you do is good enough.
Mm-hmm. And it's those kind of the DevOps principle of small continual improvements, that make all the difference with something like this. So thank you so much. Test in Production will, I believe, be back next week. I'm not sure who we've got, but it will be fantastic.
No, we are not back next week. We are not.
Oh, no, we're not. Oh, sorry. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot to put this in the notes. Next week, LaunchDarkly is making several big product announcements of cool things that are coming. Such as, this is the point where I'm really tempted to make up loads of fake internal project names. This is when we finally get to talk about Project Star Dancer. This is Project Chocolate Covered Matzah, and etc. They'll all be out there, and our world domination will commence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that is going to be next week at, I think, 10:30 PST. I should really have armed myself with these facts beforehand. I think we have there are tweets on the LaunchDarkly tweet channel that we can point to. Excuse me. It is going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific next week, May 14th. We have John Kodumal, our CTO and co-founder, Karishma Irani, our principal product manager, and also Michael McKay from IBM and Katie Spires from Wine Direct. Going to be talking about lots of interesting new things that LaunchDarkly is making available. So please join us for that. Test in Production, as a result, will be skipping a week. You'll see us in 2 weeks' time on the 21st. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again, Dawn, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was great. Have an excellent day, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.